Julia, I'm so happy that you took part in this book. You wrote a really lovely, wonderful, long essay about ear training in microtonality, and with a lot of sound examples. So I just have to tell you, Julia, as many other authors, added sound files. So we have a website, and if you get the book, in the first pages you find the address of this website, and there are many, many examples, and we add many sound examples. And Julia, you are the one, you were the early one who really gave us all your sound bibliothèque. It's really lovely to listen to it. And maybe you just tell us, what are you doing in Boston, New England Conservatory?
Okay, first I want to also thank you and Sarbanas for your very kind invitation. It was a great honor to be a part of this book. Really, I'm very proud to be part of this project. And I do have some comments to make on the audio examples as well, but I can talk about the New England Conservatory course. Can everyone hear me okay? Is it clear?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, sounds good.
So that course began in 1980, roughly 1979, 1980, with Joe Maneri as the teacher and creator of the course. And it was an experiment. He was composing with microtones and figuring it out. And while figuring it out, created a course, so he figured he could figure it out with students. It was very exploratory. And a few years later, he wrote his own book, and that was titled Preliminary Studies in the Virtual Pitch Continuum. Very long title. And that was used for many years, until he retired in 2007, and I took over the course, and I continued to use that book until I realized I needed to create my own exercises and start all over again. And so this manual that's part of our larger book together is really born from my exercises for my students, ear training and composing. That's a little history.
Yeah, thank you. That's lovely. Joe passed away some years ago, yes. So now you are the chief of microtonality in New England Conservatory. You are not only leading this course, you are also a composer. You have a band. You really give microtonal music to the Boston community.
Yes, it's I think people have a hard time really believing is that we are really used to 72 divisions of the octave, which seems like a very large number and impossible to some people as they contemplate it. But in the course, one of the changes that I made was to break that down into steps that are simplified. So students begin within 72 note equal temperament, there are quarter tones. So they start learning quarter tones and simultaneously composing and training with quarter tones. Then we put the quarter tones aside, and within 72 we also have sixth tones. So we spend some time just working in sixth tones. Ear training in sixth tones, composing in sixth tones. And then in the second semester, we get even smaller, to the smallest unit, the 12th tone, and which combines with sixth tones and quarter tones. So if you start using 12th tones, you're using everything.
Okay, this is the theoretical background somehow, or at least how you are subdividing the octave. Now, it's not only mathematics. I just continue in English. Is it okay? So sometimes I don't understand myself, so don't be unhappy if you don't understand me, but it's lovely. For example, just imagine if you have the natural seventh, which is always findable in the nature, the natural seventh. This is not in our piano, but it is in nature. And just to give you a feeling how these distances are, Julia talked about a sixth tone and sechstel tone. This is what is the difference between, let's say it simply, the piano and the nature, according to the natural seventh. And if you have more farther away partials like the 11th, the 11th Naturton, the 11th partial is just a quarter tone. It's just between the keys, Hilmar, between the keys of the piano. So just to give you an imagination, and Julia just said she starts with these quarter tones, 50 cents. I don't know if you will talk about cents later. And,
I could.
Yeah, just shortly. And would you talk about Ezra Sims, just intonation and the implication of the natural system into your system of 12 tones?
Yes, well, it's very interesting that if you think of 72 again as a sort of a very, very fine grid, like a chromatic scale that's super chromatic. You can take from it anything. And one of the things you can take from it are, and you can form are something very close to these natural tones that you are describing. And this is why Ezra Sims used 72. Joe Maneri used them for something very, very different. You mentioned before that it sounded very mathematical. To describe it, you end up using lots of numbers. And yet the artistic impulse for a composer such as Joe Maneri, and for myself, and hopefully for my students, is much more intuitive. It's just, I would like to make melodies that sound this way. It's having more options for pitches, for scales, for melodies, and for harmonies. And it's really nothing mathematical about it. It's just that in order to have something to grab onto, we divide the octave in a very specific way. But Ezra Sims, as you mentioned, was able to use 72 to get just a couple of cents away from the 7th partial, just 1 cent away from the 11th partial, just a few, 3 or 4 cents away from the 5th partial, and that's why he used it.
Yes. Yeah, okay. So this is, for me, let's just think about how I came to Julia. For me, it was absolutely interesting when I was in the United States in 79, 80. It was absolutely interesting to find out about composers and a community in Boston, for example, around Joe Maneri and Ezra Sims. In Urbana, this is close to Chicago, around Ben Johnston, my teacher in Urbana, and in California, a scenery around the computer people. To do all these pitches, to really hear them, it was very, very difficult to build, to find instruments. For example, now we have had the chance to use your instruments today, now, 30 years later. Many people like violinists or woodwind players, they are more and more used to microtonal fingerings, which is a kind of adventure. But today in the evening, Carola is with us here. Carola Schaal is a wonderful clarinetist, and she will play the bow and piece clarinet together with other colleagues from 8 o'clock. Also 20 Uhr heute ist ein Konzert mit Microtones. Müsst ihr eigentlich alle.
Theater im Zimmer.
Theater im Zimmer, das ist drüben in der Alster Chaussee. So, Julia, I just wanted to tell you how fascinating it was for me to find out about the American community and its building up. And now we know from our colleague John Schneider, he really won a Grammy just 2 or 3 days ago with his CD on Harry Partch music, Microtonal music. Can you tell us a little more about it? Did you hear some?
Unfortunately, I don't know much about it. I just saw it announced, and it was for his Parch Ensemble's CD. It's too bad he's not here, able to join us and tell us more about that project. But so I can't tell you much. I can tell you that I heard him perform in Boston the Li Po songs of Harry Partch, and it was a really beautiful performance.
Yeah.
Singing.
Li Bai, you say from China, we say Li Po, or at least Harry Partch hat gesagt Li Po, und Jutze, ich glaube es ist Li Bai, sagt ihr in China. Der große alte Dichter.
Li Bai.
Li Bai. Ja.
Als Chinesisch. Es gibt auch Li Po.
Ja. Und genau, Hannes, sag uns, wann machst du das Konzert? Mit Li Po Gesängen, mit
am 16.06. in der Katharinenkirche.
Ja, also Leute, die sozusagen in Verbindung sind, ganz deutlich, ihr müsst, wenn ihr das wollt, eure Mailadressen uns geben, dann können wir euch informieren. Der Hannes Wienert wird tatsächlich mit einem fantastischen Sheng-Spieler aus China ein Konzert machen. Da sind andere auch dabei von uns Tonartleuten. Wir begleiten euch, also Li Po Gesänge, Li Bai. Ja. Danke, Hannes, dass du da bist.
Ich bin ein bisschen erkältet, deswegen ist es auch schon von meiner Stimme Microtonal.
So schön.
Wir können halt auch, wenn jemand was fragen will, nachher.
Können wir vielleicht nachher so in der Pause.
Nee,
ja. So, Julia, it's just for us. We are a little community now in Hamburg, Microtonal community, but let's say the world. Where composers invent new scales, new relations between pitches, it's growing. So we have in our forward Savinas, we collected some examples of concerts of ensembles who now play quite easily Microtonal music. There is the Ensemble Modern, there's Ensemble Mosaik, there's Ensemble. Now here in Hamburg, we have Decoder Ensemble, and you are full of Microtones. And Carola is the clarinetist of the Decoder Ensemble. And we can have Microtones in many, many aspects. Julia, tell us about you as a composer. How do you conceive Microtonal music?
Well, I think it's very relevant to consider that I started when I was 22, but more than half of my life I have been hearing the pitches. So I think I want to emphasize the importance of training and spending a lot of time with it, and it becomes something that you can hear. It becomes your musical thinking. It includes these pitches naturally. So when I compose, I compose very melodically most of the time. I'm usually able to sing what I write most of the time, individual lines. So I consider that an important aspect of my own process.
This is very interesting. Just let me hook on this idea of singing, hearing. This is what I learned when I came to North America. It's a very different approach from our, let's say, Central European way of thinking. I was trained as a composer of avant-garde music. I just talked with Adrian about this question. Do we build music as a world of ideas as a composer, where we create proportions, where we think about wonderful aspects of a not already audible world? Or do we come from hearing, like what I learned in America, that we listen to an interval, that we listen to the possibilities of changing the interval, like Harry Parch or Ezra Sims, the composer in Boston, or you. You said you are just singing, you are hearing, you then are testing how to write. This is the big double folding of the world. We write things, we have a paper, we conceive, we have concepts of of proportions, of kind of theoretical applications towards music, but not music. And it's the taking of music directly. How do you position yourself?
Yeah, I use my voice when I'm teaching the course, so I sing the intervals. I was an oboist, that was my instrument, but I don't play enough anymore to use that. Joe Maneri was a saxophonist and clarinetist, so he would have his instrument in every class, and he would demonstrate everything on the instrument. All of the students have to have their instruments in class and play the intervals or sing them. So it's constantly producing the intervals with your body, with your voice, and with your hands and your embouchure. That's constant the entire time. So it doesn't have room to become too conceptual. It has to be tangible.
Yeah, this is very close to the approach of Harry Parch. He created, or he used this term corporeal reality.
Corporeal,
the corpus is real, and he thought about what is our body and what can our body somehow produce or conceive, or what is our ear, what is possible for our ear to distinguish. And you are very much on the border, thinking about 12 tones, which is 17 cents. So think of a half tone between C and C sharp, and you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 steps in between. Ein Halbton, und der wird in 6 kleine Teilchen unterteilt, und das ist das Material, mit dem Julia arbeitet.
Yes, it's a belief that you can make a motion that small and the audience will hear it and can process it as a melodic step, which sometimes works and sometimes does not work.
Yeah. Julia, I'm so happy that you were here. Should we